Hi, I'm Diana Benoist, the Student Assistance Program Coordinator at Downers Grove South, and here with me are Keith Bullock, our Student Assistance Coordinator at Downers Grove North, and we're also joined today by Dr. Samir Soneji, who is the Associate Professor for Health Policy at Dartmouth College, but he's also an alumni of Downers Grove South. He is from our class of 1994, and he's joining us during our homecoming week because he was recently inducted as one of our distinguished alumni. So we're very privileged to be with him today talking a little bit about e-cigarettes, and he's done a lot of research on the impact of specifically marketing and advertising for adolescents and other minority groups, and how e-cigarettes and vaping has become sort of this phenomenon that we're seeing, especially with our students in the district, becoming more and more of an issue. So the first question we wanted to ask you is just, why do you think all of a sudden vaping and e-cigarette use has become so popular among young people?
It's great to be back here, and I think you're asking the preeminent question is why vaping is increasing rapidly. We, as a country and as a public health community, have experienced nearly a quarter century of success against youth smoking. Youth smoking rates are at some of their lowest ever. Less than 1 in 10 kids are smoking actively, 1 cigarette a month, and yet e-cigarette use has risen dramatically. E-cigarettes were first introduced into the U.S. Just a few years ago as a smoking cessation tool, and of course youth use was very low. I mean, what kid uses a nicotine patch? Nobody. And over the last 5 or so years, e-cigarettes have been heavily marketed towards youth, specifically kids. And part of it is a business decision. The tobacco industry is in a tough spot. Its best clients, its best customers are dying. They're dying 10 years earlier on average than non-smokers. And so how do you replace these smokers? One nefarious way to replace smokers is to hook kids onto smoking and onto vaping. Vaping is a very lucrative business. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's projected to grow substantially. It doesn't have the same stigma as smoking, and so e-cigarette companies are now being bought by Big Tobacco, and Big Tobacco is using its playbook that has worked so successfully to attract kids to vaping.
What would you like to share with parents as some of the risks and consequences of this huge increase in adolescent use of e-cigarettes?
Vaping, by its name, is a vapor. There's a misperception that vapor is just purely water. There is, of course, water in there. Inside that e-juice, that e-liquid, is propylene glycol, it's glycerin. These are in a lot of foods that we eat. There's a lot of glycerin in lots of things. It's a binding agent. There's lots of flavors and flavorants in that e-juice that, again, is perfectly safe for ingestion, but it's not safe for inhalation. And what happens is that e-cigarette is heating the e-juice at such a high temperature that it's breaking the molecules. It's breaking the glycerin. It's breaking those flavorant chemicals, and it creates free radicals. And these are the same kinds of free radicals that we are concerned about with cancer. And so we're learning a lot about cellular damage with e-cigarettes, and the damages are substantial. There's respiratory damage. There's known carcinogens being inhaled. There's also psychological damage and harm. What we found is that behaviorally, kids who start vaping start to change their friends. Kids who start vaping who otherwise didn't really have friends who smoked start to make friends who smoke. And so their friend circle change. And so parents may notice that their kids are starting to hang around different kids, and disproportionately those kids, those new friends, are already smokers. And we know, unfortunately, that one of the big risk factors to start combustible smoking is peer smoking, that if your friends smoke, you're likely to pick it up. One of the other concerns is addiction to nicotine, that there's again a misperception that what they're vaping doesn't have nicotine. And nicotine doesn't cause cancer. Nicotine is addictive. Nicotine is more addictive than pornography. It's more addictive than other illicit drugs. It's more addictive sometimes than cocaine. It is an incredibly addictive drug. And e-cigarettes are often marketed as having no nicotine, but really the labeling, the product standards are very weak. And so kids might think that they're vaping no nicotine e-cigarettes when in fact they're vaping medium or high concentration nicotine because of the mislabeling. And so it's certainly possible, we've seen, that kids who start vaping become very addicted to nicotine. And how do you see that? They're starting to vape in the morning. they're thinking about vaping. They're vaping in the bathroom. They're vaping innocuously in school. And it's not because they're deviant, and it's not because they want to irritate their teachers or irritate their school. It's because they are addicted to one of the most addictive drugs known. And then what we found in our research, which is very alarming, is that kids who vape, who are otherwise not at particularly high risk to smoke, they don't have friends who smoke, they don't have parents who smoke, they get good grades in school, they're not high sensation seeking, they're not deviant, they're just regular kids, sometimes they're affluent kids. They start vaping, they start transitioning to cigarette smoking, either exclusively or dual vaping smoking, at much higher rates than their counterparts who don't smoke, who don't vape.
Is there anything that the research tells us about vaping being a sort of a stepping stone to other drug use, particularly cannabis?
We're actually seeing a lot of e-cigarette use with liquid marijuana, and it's being promoted in marketing that's not by the tobacco industry, but that's in the media. And so we have a set of work that looks at music videos. And these music videos have a lot of marijuana use, including e-marijuana use. And so these are e-cigarettes or e-mods that are being used to put liquid marijuana or liquid THC.
Can you say something about the difference between the THC levels in plant cannabis versus the oil and the different liquid that can be used in an e-cigarette or a vape product?
Yeah, the marijuana of yesterday is not the marijuana of today. Now you can get highly concentrated, highly refined, highly industrialized marijuana, often in states that have legalized marijuana, and so it's this new industry. Tobacco companies are buying marijuana companies, and they're producing high quality, highly consistent, high potency marijuana because that makes business sense. What's also happening now is synthetic marijuana, and then you can increase the concentration at much higher levels than you would ever see naturally.
Any final thoughts or advice for parents navigating this kind of new world of e-cigarettes and vaping?
It's an opportunity. It's a hard opportunity, but I think it's an important opportunity for actually parents to say, I have an expert about vaping, and that expert is actually my child. My children, know how they're being targeted. And I think the important point to convey to kids, for parents to convey to kids, is that they trust their children to not be duped, to not be manipulated, to not be tricked by industry. And that's what's happening. When teens know that they're being tricked, they don't like it. Nobody likes being duped. Nobody likes being deceived. And teens fight back. And we saw that with cigarettes. That's part of the reason why cigarettes have come down so much with youth, is that enough is enough. We're tired of being tricked. We're tired of you trying to kill us. And the vaping industry will hear that message. And so I think it's actually not parents talking to kids, it's parents listening to kids, listening to their experts who happen to be their children, but experts nonetheless.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your time. We really
You're welcome.
appreciate hearing your perspective.